I write, in his 1944 State of the Union address to Congress, Franklin Roosevelt declared, "This republic had its beginning and grew to its present strength under the protection of certain inalienable rights. Among them the right of free speech, free press, free worship, trial by jury, freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures. They were our rights to life and liberty." Unquote. Then I add, but for Roosevelt, these rights were no longer enough. He went on to propose a second Bill of Rights based on security and prosperity. Quote, "The right to a useful and remunerative job in the industries or shops or farms or mines of the nation, to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family decent living, of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad, of every family to a decent home, to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health, to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment, and to a good education," unquote. And then I write, this is tyranny's disguise. These are not rights. They are the statists' false promises of utopianism, which the statist uses to justify all trespasses on the individual's private property. Liberty and private property go hand in hand. By dominating the one, the statist dominates both. For if the individual cannot keep or dispose of the value he creates by his own intellectual and or physical labor, he serves the state. He exists to serve the state. The Second Bill of Rights and its legal and policy progeny require the individual to surrender control of his fate to the government. Former Harvard University law professor, and by the way, very close friend of Barack Obama, and a current Obama administration official, Cass Sunstein, a leading advocate of delinking liberty and property rights, and President Barack Obama's likely future nominee to the Supreme Court. He's one of 4 or 5 being talked about now. Remember, I wrote this months ago. Considers Roosevelt's Second Bill of Rights, what I just read to you, to be among his greatest speeches. So it's important that some attention be paid to Sunstein, because it will give us some view into Barack Obama's thinking. Sunstein believes that economic value and private property are not natural occurrences in human interaction, but rather the outgrowth of government and law. And I would go further, unfair government policies and unfair law. Therefore, he and other legal realists, that's what they call themselves, realists, assert that government authority should be used to better exploit and redistribute wealth. And I played you an audio before. This is Obama's obsession, to use the instrumentalities of government to literally seize from some citizens to give to others, as he, Obama, and his fellow administration officials believe fit. Now, Sunstein's manner of thought ignores certain anthropological realities of the human species. In nature, man's progenitors were almost never the fastest, strongest, most agile, deadliest, or toughest creatures in any situation. Man had little in the way of innate protections against climate extremes and naturally occurring threats to his existence. What differentiated man from the rest of the animal kingdom was, in part, his ability to adapt his behavior to overcome his weaknesses and better master his circumstances. One of the fundamental ways man adapts is to acquire and possess property. It is how he makes his home, finds or grows food, makes clothing, and generally improves his life. Private property is not an artificial construct. It is endemic to human nature and survival. Sunstein's realism, such as it is not new. He creates the false choice between anarchy, where there are no laws protecting the individual, private property, contracts, and so forth, and tyranny, where the sovereign and the sovereign alone arbitrarily grants fundamental rights, including property rights. So having declared the sovereign paramount to God and nature, and having delinked liberty from property, The individual must rely on the government for his sustenance. That's where they're going. That's where they're headed. Of course, history shows that man will starve and freeze if he relies on the government for his sustenance and surrender his liberty as well. Now, as for these realists are an arrogant lot who reject the nation's founding principles. That would include Obama. They teach that the Constitution should not be interpreted as the framers intended, limiting the authority of the federal government through negative rights. That is, the right not to be abused, the right not to be coerced by the government. Instead, they urge a different view, that the Constitution be interpreted as compelling the government to enforce something called positive rights. That is, economic and social justice, or as FDR explained, a second Bill of Rights. And so they plot to transform the society through the judiciary without the consent of the people and without regard to the Constitution. And they're well positioned to do so. There's no denying that the judiciary has assumed the role of final arbiter of the Constitution and that the other branches have acquiesced. As such, the judiciary encourages this kind of pernicious delinquency. The judiciary today behaves in the manner of an ongoing constitutional convention, unilaterally amending the Constitution almost at will. A majority of Supreme Court justices have, on occasion, even justified the use of foreign law in interpreting the Constitution. The application of customs, traditions, and values that attach to foreign cultures and laws provides no legitimate insight into America's Constitution and diminishes the contemporary role of state and federal representative branches in writing America's laws and amending or not the Constitution. The arbitrary application of foreign law, which provides an activist justice with an infinite smorgasbord of legal options, is a flat-out rejection of the predicate for America's governmental system. And it lasts only as long as the next opinion.
From the best-selling author of Men in Black, Mark Levin's Liberty and Tyranny.
This is the kind of book that's going to spread like wildfire through the underground.
Rush Limbaugh.
This is the kind of book that people will read in the bathroom with a flashlight on college campi.
Liberty and Tyranny, a Conservative Manifesto.
This is the kind of book that people will send with no return address to their parents, boyfriends, and girlfriends.
Liberty and Tyranny, a worldwide bestseller.
People who read it won't admit to having read it. They'll just claim what they've learned from it as their own knowledge. It will be passed around in various places in a plain brown wrapper with whispers, "Read this. Don't tell anybody where you got it."
Get your copy of Mark Levin's Liberty and Tyranny wherever important books are sold.
You need to understand what the left has done and how far we have come from the principles and concepts of our founding to where we are now.
Mark Levin's Liberty and Tyranny from Simon & Schuster.